Okay, it's time for another project. This is actually a gift for a friend, and I wanted to make a guest book. This friend has parties on occasion, and I thought, I know 20 years ago, or almost 20 years ago, I was given my first guest book. And some people may find it odd because they only use guest books for parties or for weddings or showers, but this one I have moved from state to state with me, and it's so fun to look back and see what guests I've had in my home over the last nearly 20 years now. So I thought, well, this would be a fun little gift for my friend who's having a party, and so I'm just going to make this for her. I went shopping today, and Michael's, at least in my state, had all of Tim Holtz things on sale for 30% off. And I've looked at these papers, and I hadn't just wanted to buy them, but when it was 30% off, I decided to buy them. So the book that I'm making, the main paper that I'm using is from this book. I'm going to use this page here with the bird on it, and that will be the back cover of my book. And then the inside covers of my book are going to be made out of this one that looks kind of like a newspaper. Actually, it looks more like a dictionary page. Now this is the Craft Resist, so on the background you can't really see it, but it has letters embossed, and those hopefully will stand out a little bit more when I ink over them. So those are 3 of the pages I'm using. And then the front page that I'm going to be using is a paper from K & Company. Now I had this paper in a paper stack that I bought of double-sided papers, but this one I just got on sale in open stock paper, and it's not double-sided, which suits me just fine for this particular project because it's going on the back of or the front. It's going to be the front cover of my guest book, and I really like this size. And the reason I chose this size is I had my husband go on the computer, and I had him make 2 different types of guest book pages. This one says party guests, and then the person can write the date of the party, and then the guests can just sign in. And so I chose this size because this is half of an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, and I bought this paper at my local craft store, and it was just their own brand, and it's kind of it's a creamy color, but it's got little flecks through it, and I thought it would look good with that. And then the other one he made for me, and I may not use all of these because this would make a pretty thick book, is just what you would typically see on your paper. Just it says guest and the name and a date and the address, and I'll cut some holes in that, and that will be part of my book. So a few other supplies that I will be using. I really like this glue and seal, and that's what I will be using to do the covers of my book. And then I found this stamp collection from American Crafts, and I thought I would use the You Make Me Happy, the Home Sweet Home, Good Times, and maybe some of the other stamps from that. I'm not sure where I'll put them or even if I'll really use them. I haven't got that far in the project yet. And then I also picked up these stickers from Bo Bunny, which don't really go with the blue on the front. They're in the same tone family though, and I think they'll look really good on the craft paper, so I'll use some of those. Probably like Family Times Are the Best of Times, and Family is a Work of the Heart, and so I'll use a couple of these inside their family memories and just put those in there randomly. So to start out, what I used, I took chipboard. Now if you haven't seen any of my other videos, I don't purchase chipboard. I may need to sometime if I want a thicker chipboard, but for most of the books I make, I just have a stash of chipboard, and there's a couple places I have gotten them from. The first place is off the back of notebooks, or sometimes if you buy a pad of some sort. I prefer the kind that doesn't have rings or anything in it, but I actually got this chipboard from work. Where I work, we go through a lot of forms, and when they package those forms, they put a piece of thin chipboard in the back of the forms to keep them nice and smooth and they don't get messed up that way. And one of the clerks was saving them for me, so I've got a huge stack of them. So I just took my chipboard and I cut it to 6.5 inches wide by 9 inches tall. Now this, when this is cut, this ends up being 5.5 by 8.5, but because I only want it on one end, I didn't want it to be a full inch in length larger. I wanted it to be a 1/2 inch, because these will butt right up to the end like that, and then so then I'll have about a 1/2 inch margin on the 3 sides. So I took 2 pieces of that, and then I played with my paper to see how I wanted it to position it on the craft board. And so this is the bird paper, and this is going to be my back cover, and this is the inside of my back cover, and I've already got that all glued on so it can be drying. And then I've also already glued on my front cover. Now I'm waiting to glue on the inside of the front cover because there's another step that I want to do before I do that, and we'll get started on our project. I took my Elegant Edges cartridge and I went to page 53, and I like this oblong shape. So I cut using center point. I printed out who my book was for, and it says The Joy of Remembering Our Guests, and then underneath that it has the name of the people that I'm giving the book to. And so I used the center point feature, and I centered it right on my G, and then I had placed it on my map because at 4 inches, that is from tip to tip going this way. Well, I wanted it to be this way, so I just placed my lettering on my mat so that it would go from side to side. So just know that you have to mentally turn that around, because otherwise it's going to cut like this. So then I wanted a frame, so I cut my shadow image down here at the same 4 inches, but I don't think, I must not have shifted it, so I just realized that just while we're talking, I didn't get this shape. I got the rounder shape, which was for the original image, and I thought, well, that won't work, it doesn't fit right. So instead what I did is I just set my Cricut up to 4.5 inches, and then it fits just perfectly. So I'll go ahead and glue that, or take and adhere that down. But before I do, one thing I want to do here is I want to ink it up. So I'm just going to take a piece of my paper here, just off camera here, and just kind of cover up so that the name's covered. And so I'm going to take my Faded Jeans Distress ink and ink up my foam brush. These were also on sale. I've been holding off getting one of those, but they were on sale, so I went ahead and got it this time. And I'm just going to ink around the edges just to bring in that blue. And then on the blue, I'm going to do, let's get a little more down here. On the blue mat, I'm going to do the same thing, only on it, I'm going to use the faded burlap. You know, the blue I didn't think was a perfect match, but I thought I could soften it quite a bit with my burlap, and it would blend a little bit more. So I'm actually going to go further into the mat, so that most of that is covered up right at the edge, so that it will fade, so it'll give kind of a duskier color. Actually, this is not faded burlap, this is walnut stain that I'm using here. I grabbed the wrong name. So that just kind of softens that blue a little bit. And then we'll take this down. And I want to be pretty liberal with my ATG, because this is a book that I hope they'll be able to use and treasure, but in so using, I know at least at my house, my original guest book is just falling apart. So I'm thinking it's time to tear mine apart and rebind it somehow. Maybe I'll make one like this for me. So I want to center it carefully on there. And I only had one sheet of this paper, so I have to be very careful with the paper, because by the time I made my first mistake with it, it was pretty much gone. All right, so now we have our frame. Now before we adhere that down, what I want to do is, it's starting to curl a little bit, but it will flatten out. I'll set some books on it or something overnight. So now what I want to do is I found I didn't have any of the right color of blue ribbon in my stash. So I found some brown that I had picked up from Gifts International, and we're just going to center that right on the middle, which is why I didn't put the back on the book yet, because I wanted to be able to bring the ribbon around to the back and then adhere it under the edges of the book so that it wouldn't show. So that's why I was waiting to put the back cover on the book. So I want this extra ATG on the front, because also if I was doing a card or something, I might not do this because I might not care if it was kind of free floating, but for a book, I want it to not be free floating. I'll just hold that down. Just kind of center it just like that. Now, all this extra ATG I'm not worried about, because I can just kind of peel it off the edges like that. And then I'll make sure that I'm flat here and just flip it around to the back. So before I put the front on, I'll go ahead and show you how I do my covers. This larger bottle of Glue and Seal didn't come with a brush, and so I saved my little bottle, my trial bottle that I bought to see how I would like it, which it's really been my favorite glue. Now it is wet and gooey, so that's why the pages are curling, and I'm very, very generous at this point with this, because I don't want my book to come apart in a year or in 2 months. So I'm really generous, but at the same time I want it to be really smooth, because I don't want bubbles in my paper. I also want to get it all on there. Now remember, this is that craft mat from Ranger, and I don't worry about getting glue on it because it cleans up beautifully, as does the ink. It'll all just wash right off for me, unlike my pink mat that I need to take apart and scrub from before I purchased this other mat, because it's definitely seen better days. So we'll just set that aside, and I will grab my extra sheet. Now I want to be sure that I have this in the right place. I want this to be this direction, and then we'll just lay that on, making sure all the edges are even. I think that's out of the camera frame, I apologize. Making sure all the edges are even, and then we'll set it up. Okay, like I said, overnight I will let that set up and get nice and flat for me. But I just want to be sure it's really smooth, because I don't like bubbles, which is why I hesitate to use wet glue on a project like this. But wet glue is the only thing that's going to make it strong enough. ATG is not going to last for something that's seen a lot of use. Now that isn't exactly straight, but I think it's going to be okay by the time I get my center on it.